In recognition of Black History Month, as Americans, we celebrate all manner of Black achievement, from Harriet Tubman to Sojourner Truth, from Malcolm X to Rosa Parks, and of course, Martin Luther King Jr. While there are countless figures who've helped to shape American Black history, there is one figure in particular who I believe was foundational to all of them, and that's Booker T. Washington. Booker T. Washington represents the incredible resiliency that Black people have demonstrated since first being brought to this country. Before it became popular to blame others for our misfortune, Booker T. Washington showed us what it means to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. He showed us how to make something of ourselves, regardless of circumstances, regardless of our race, regardless of the things we may or may not have had. Booker T. Washington proved that there's always a way, even when it seems that there is no way. Unlike those who fought for civil rights, Booker T. Washington was born into slavery in 1856. It wasn't until he was 9 years old that he and his enslaved family received the news that slaves were free. And while this was good news, it was also terrifying. You see, after living as slaves for over 400 years, Black people during this time had no clue about how to take care of themselves. Not only could they not read or write, but they didn't even know the basics of life, such as how to bathe or brush their teeth. Despite this, Washington was determined to get an education so that he could help establish other Black people following their liberation from slavery. He traveled an incredible 500 miles, mostly on foot, to a school in Virginia that was committed to the education of freed Blacks, the Hampton Normal and Agricultural Institute. What little money he had was spent on his journey to Hampton, leaving him penniless upon his arrival. The headmistress of the institute doubted his ability to study there, but Washington would not take no for an answer. Eventually, the mistress gave him a chance for admittance by assigning him housekeeping duties. From his autobiography, Up from Slavery, which I recommend everyone read, he recounts the following experience. The head teacher said to me, "The adjoining recitation room needs sweeping. Take the broom and sweep it." It occurred to me at once that there was my chance. Never did I receive an order with more delight. When I was through, I reported to the head teacher. She went into the room and inspected the floor and closets. Then she took her handkerchief and rubbed it on the woodwork about the walls and over the table and benches. When she was unable to find one bit of dirt on the floor or a particle of dust on any of the furniture, she quietly remarked, "I guess you will do to enter this institution." Washington proved himself and went on to graduate from the institute with high honors. Several years later, he would be given a mission that became his life's work, heading the Tuskegee Institute in Alabama. When he arrived on campus, the school was severely underdeveloped, with just a few shacks and a chicken coop. On top of this, the school had little to no money. But of course, there wasn't a challenge big enough for Booker T. Washington. Determined to transform the Tuskegee Institute into a premier institution for blacks, Washington raised hundreds of thousands of dollars from white people in the surrounding area. Also, under his direction, the students built every building and every desk on campus. This coincided perfectly with Washington's philosophy of a practical education, teaching blacks to be self-sufficient, to not expect handouts, but learn to do things for yourself. The students at Tuskegee not only had to master their academic studies, but also had to learn a trade. This was all about developing essential skills among blacks that would be highly sought after by their white neighbors, so that blacks would be considered valuable members of their communities. The individual who can do something that the world wants done will in the end make his way regardless of his race. In perhaps his most famous speech at the Atlanta Exposition in 1895, Washington argued that blacks needed time to develop educationally and economically. Rather than running for political office or trying to secure equal rights, blacks should focus on themselves and their communities, and in time, social equality would come. Of course, this ideal was unpopular with some blacks during Washington's time, most notably W.E.B. Du Bois, who wanted a more aggressive approach to equal rights for black people. Nevertheless, it was Washington's philosophy of black economic and personal development that prevailed throughout the course of history. In America today, despite the stigma of systemic racism, there is nothing we cannot do if we have the right mindset and skill set. If we take the time to educate and develop ourselves personally and professionally, we cannot be denied. Although Washington was born a slave and had to overcome many hurdles in his life, financial and otherwise, he never once blamed the white man. He was too busy developing himself and those around him to start complaining about what he didn't have or what he couldn't do. He never identified himself as a victim whose hands were tied. He recognized the power and value of meaningful service. If you have a needed skill set that's valuable to the community, to the world, no one will ostracize you in light of your race. The bottom line is, it's all up to us. We have the power over the condition and outcome of our lives. As we continue to celebrate Black History Month, let us also continue to strive for personal and economic development as a race and people. If Booker T. Washington was able to do it up from slavery, we can certainly do it today. I'm Javon Harris of Seek, and I thank you for watching.